Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. Good evening. It's lovely to see all of you back in here looking energized and active. I hope you've had fruitful discussions wherever you've been this afternoon. And we've saved the best for last. This is a very important dialogue, a word that I've heard every single session I've been to: funding, funding, funding. And the person who's going to be discussing this, I'm hearing a yes here, we're in church, hallelujah. Maximilian Norfroth is going to be hosting this session, and of course from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The brave new world of media. That's the kind of topic we choose for today, and that was the topic of the keynote this morning. And I can tell you from myself that although I'm a journalist for already 10 years now, the world of media still feels kind of brave and new to me, sometimes challenging, but always exciting. My name is Max, I'm a business journalist, and for 3 months now I'm also a founder, entrepreneur, how is it called? In August, I quit my job at Handelsblatt in Germany. For those who doesn't know it, it's kind of the leading business news outlet in Germany. I've worked there for more than 5 years. It was a great time. Like, the 2 main highlights, I think, was I had the chance to be a correspondent in Moscow, and the last 2 years I worked for Orange. It's the new young brand of Handelsblatt. And this summer I decided to start my own medium, so to be innovative or die. I didn't die, so I tried to be innovative. And this new medium is focused on social media only, for those who like not only to be informed but also inspired, because that's what I found out about, especially the young audience. They want more from media than only information. It's called Was mit Wirtschaft, so literally translated in English, something with business. You can find it on Instagram, that's where I started. Every day I do an Instagram story, and about several topics, always from a business perspective. Like this week, it was about some TV series, it was about the protests in Chile. Sometimes it's about the wine industry, whatever is interesting on that day. And people tell me, hey Max, great idea, you're very innovative, but what about the money? How do you want to make money with this project? And that is exactly the question we're going to tackle in this panel. Which is especially interesting to me is, what's the solution to get a sustainable funding for new, independent and innovative media? And what about crowdfunding, paywalls, maybe sponsored content, or even philanthropic supporters? I'm very happy to tackle those challenges right now with our great guest. I'm going to introduce him to you. And first of all, of course, welcome on the behalf of Konrad Adenauer Foundation, KAS, that's the abbreviation that we use in Germany. And special thanks to all the speakers who took a long way to come here. I only made it from Düsseldorf, so I had the shortest distance. They came from Zimbabwe, Ghana, even Mexico. And this question, innovate or die, I think it sounds kind of radical, but it's a quote from Gwen Lister. She's the founding editor of the Namibian newspaper, and she put it on 1 year ago at the KAS-hosted conferences in Ghana. And I can quote her, that's what she said. People's appetite for serious news has largely dissipated in favor of slavish social media adherence. All newspapers need to adapt or die in this predominantly negative environment. So even the recent proposal to establish an international fund for public interest media suggests that at least in some context, there's no business model available to adapt to the current environment, and therefore the sector should be maybe treated as non-profit. I don't know, we're going to discuss about this topic. On the other hand, the good thing is we have many examples of very successful and innovative projects that might be a model for others to follow, to inspire them. And 2 of them will be present here on the panel. So when you look on the official agenda, you will find a person called Audrey Gadzebko. She should be one of the speakers in this panel. Unfortunately, she has become a victim today, a victim of the Lufthansa strike that is going on whole Germany. So she tried to catch her flight from Munich, couldn't take it because 1,300 flights were canceled. And now she's in the train from Munich to Germany, from Munich to Cologne. And you guys know You guys know that traveling with Deutsche Bahn can be a brave new world too, so we wish her all the best. But she can't be here with us right now. But I'm very happy that Audrey had recommended us a man from Ghana who will join us instead. He is the executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Before that, he served on a global network for free expression organizations based in Toronto, Canada. Previously, he worked for 5 years with the Chronicle newspaper as a reporter and later even became the paper's editor. Moreover, he has been a reviewer of the annual Global Press Freedom Ratings, so a real expert, I would say. Please give a warm applause to Suleimana Braima. Stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I would want to start by saying, as Max was saying, Professor Gadjepo was my teacher. And so at an event like this, when you get a call in the morning and say, hey, Lufthansa has canceled my flights and I'm on the panel, so you're there and I think you should do this for me, it's still the teacher-student relationship. You cannot but take the instruction. So I'll try. I would do 4 things. First of all, to paint a picture of the context in the region where I come from, and then also give a sense of what the current challenges with funding and sustainability is, and what is being done by media organizations, and then some recommendations and whether or not some solutions have been found. As was explained, I work with an organization called the Media Foundation for West Africa. We are based in Ghana, and we work across the 16 countries in West Africa. So, and multilingual. So we do the 5 countries, Ghana, Gambia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, the 2 Portuguese, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, and the 9 Anglophones from Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and the rest of them. Now, these countries, until some 25, 29 years ago, were all being led by military dictators. So in Ghana, it was Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. In Nigeria, it was Major General Olusegun Obasanjo. In Burkina Faso, it was Major General Dat, and so on and so forth. And what that meant was that governments had absolute control over media. Now, 20, 30 years on, you come to the region, and the region is literally saturated with media. For example, in 1994 in Ghana, all the way up to 1994, we only had the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, the Daily Graphic, the Ghanaian Times as the media in the country. So one broadcaster, some 2 or 3 newspapers, and that was it. Today, as I speak, we still have those 2 broadcast companies owned by the state and 462 radio stations operating in a country with barely about 30 million people. It's the same across the regions. If you go to the Gambia, which has about 1.8 million people, it has over 20 radio stations, more than 25 newspapers. If you go to Cape Verde, you know, the population there is 500,000, but they always want to be called, say that it's 500,000, so that it looks big. So with 500,000, and they still have a number of publications, a number of newspapers, and so on and so forth. So that is the context. And indeed, within the last 10 years, then we all suddenly realized that, well, there is digitalization and we need to adopt technology, we need to go online. And so today, if you come to the region, you would find a lot of media organizations online. Newspapers have gone online, radio stations are having online versions, television stations are having online versions. So yes, they all realize the importance of going digital. And they all have also started beginning to feel the advertising squeeze, the challenge towards sustainability, and different models are being experimented. Now, I would want to just quickly mention a few points in terms of what the challenges are in terms of sustainability. Number 1 is across the region, governments are the biggest source of advertising revenue. So whether it is the public procurement notices whether it is government-sponsored ads and so on and so forth, about 60 to 70% of the ad revenues come from governments. So when the government decides that you are being too critical of it, what it means is that you lose out completely. And this is something, something that all governments in the region would use against any media organization that appears to be critical. And in my view, in Africa, true journalism would necessarily mean that you have to be critical of the government. And so recently what I told a government official is that, yes, our government say, well, we support press freedom, we support media pluralism, but what they don't support is journalism. And indeed, what we want is pluralism and journalism. So the advertising squeeze by government is a big issue. The other point is, across the region, if you ask any media outlets, newspapers, who are your readers, how many people do you reach, what is your target, I doubt they would have any meaningful answer. Those who respond would just respond, but with no basis. What it means is that there is lack of audience data. No research is being done to map who is reading what, who is listening to what, who is viewing what, who is willing to pay for what, and who is willing to subscribe to what. That is something that is absent. And it is also partly because when it comes to technology, there is weak capacity to be able to adopt and adapt. And therefore, in terms of being able to get used to technology-enabled ways of being sustainable and raising funding, that is also a challenge that is confronts the media in the region. Plus, the fact is, the economies are not as robust as we find them here. And so if you have over 400 radio stations competing for that little revenue within the media ecosystem, you can understand why they are struggling. If you go to the Gambia, and the total ad revenue for the year is less than $500,000, and you have close to combined number of over 60, 70 media organizations trying to struggle to pitch in, you can understand what the challenge is. Of course, somebody will say, what about Nigeria? Yes, Nigeria is big, close to 200 million people, but as I mentioned, where is the audience data? And who are willing to pay? And are they able to pay online? And so on and so forth. So in the midst of these challenges, what are the media organizations in the region doing to be able to survive? A number of things are being done. One, people are still struggling to get as little as they can from advertising revenue. A number of media organizations are beginning to innovate around organizing events and charging fees for people to pay, and so on and so forth. In Ghana, it's being done well. In Nigeria, there is a publication called The Business Day that has a lot of events, including awards, and they get paid for that. Then, of course, in the Francophone countries especially, there is government subsidy, but there is a problem to it, because if the government gives you money, you can only publish what the government wants you to publish. And so, yes, if you go to Cote d'Ivoire, if you go to Benin, if you go to Senegal, and so on, there is an annual allocation in the state budget towards media development. But as I said, it doesn't allow for independent journalism to thrive. And yes, there is philanthropic investment. So in Nigeria, for example, the Makata Foundation, I know, has invested close to $6 million in the last 1 year towards investigative journalism. In Ghana, a combination from the EU delegation, Danida, DFID, have established a fund that supports civil society, and over the last 3-4 years, there has been over $3-point-something million towards media. There are other philanthropic organizations that are funding media. The Gates Foundation, for example, is funding in Nigeria as well. The challenge, though, is that much of these funding that would be calculated as investment to the media are actually investments that are going into media for development and not media development. And by that, what I mean is, take this money and report on HIV/AIDS. Take that money and report on anti-corruption. This money and report on health and malaria, and so on and so forth. So the money you get, as much as it can be, is actually not towards the development of your institution, but for you to report on specific things. And that is where a lot of the philanthropic funding is going. And then in Nigeria, a few organizations like This Day have started experimenting with paywalls. Premium Times in Nigeria has started the Guardian model of making public appeals after you read the story. And then, of course, in Nigeria, again, a lot of non-profit newsrooms have established. So, for example, there is the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. There is the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. There is the This Day Center for Media Analysis, and so on and so forth. And all these are non-profit newsrooms that rely solely on philanthropic donations. So these are some of the things that are happening as far as the attempts to innovate, attempts to survive are concerned. Question is solutions. Are there solutions so far? Unfortunately, the answer is no. And I guess it's not just in West Africa. April, May of this year, I had the opportunity to visit not less than some 20, 30 newsrooms in the US. And the question on my mind was this, and everywhere I went, the answer was that we don't have the solution. We are trying. So what may work in West Africa? First of all, I think it's important that organizations in West Africa, media organizations, begin to do a lot more work on building audience data, because that, I believe, is the beginning. When you don't know who your consumers are, who you are targeting, who may pay, who may not pay, I doubt you can have a way of innovating. The other point is, yes, journalism is in crisis. People don't trust the media more, but when and wherever journalists have made the effort to ensure that they are producing credible, high-quality news, the citizens have also demonstrated support for it. And I would use an example in Ghana about 2 years ago. A journalist did a story on maternal deaths in the second biggest hospital in the country. And the report revealed that on a daily basis, at least a mother and a child will die in the hospital. And when this story was done, there was a public appeal. And within a matter of 2 months, the media organization had raised close to $2 million, equivalent of $2 million. And by 6 months, a mother and child facility had been put in at this hospital. And this, for me, exemplifies the fact that if media organizations are able to do the kind of journalism that matters to the people will be willing to make a contribution towards that. The other point is investment by philanthropic organizations. And I think that it is time that media organizations in the Global South are supported in terms of media development, as opposed to supporting them to use their platforms for the development orientations and perspectives that these organizations aspire. So it's more of investment that enables the media organizations to reflect, to think, to take risk, to innovate, to build systems that would allow them to thrive, and that is quite important. And perhaps finally, and much importantly, no media house can thrive in an environment that there is oppression. Media houses can only innovate, media houses can only be sustainable if they operate in an environment that is freer, where journalists are not arbitrarily arrested, detained, beaten up, and so on and so forth. And these are phenomena that occurs on a daily basis from Guinea to Cote d'Ivoire. And of course, nowadays we have the fundamentalist issues around Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and so on and so forth. And I think governments have a responsibility to ensure that the freedom that the media need to thrive prevails in the region. I think these are the highlights I will present for now, and hopefully we can have a conversation going forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this great intro, Sulemana. I already learned a lot about the media society and business in Africa. It seems that many people love the radio there. I'm quite impressed. I don't even know how many stations we have in Germany, but 450 already in Ghana. I think that's what you said is quite amazing. So what we're doing is we're having short speeches. Sulemana started, and then our two other guests, and then we're opening up the discussion. The second speaker I would like to introduce to you is a woman from Mexico. She has focused her more than 10 years career in digital journalism. And there she has managed to overcome the opacity that prevails in Mexico through the use of federal transparency law and data journalism to build stories. I think that's what journalists do. And she made a year-long investigation, for example, to create Narco Data. Who of you knows the Netflix series Narcos? Hands up. Okay, so maybe you should check out Narco Data, yeah, to get some data on the Narcos. It's a data journalism report that explains the presence of organized crime in Mexico. And she, as the editorial coordinator, she launched the first fact-checking project in Mexico that would be the base of Verificado 2018, an initiative where 90 media outlets, civil society organizations, and universities joined forces against mis- and disinformation. Now, since 2017, she is executive editor in Animal Politico. That is an independent digital publication in Mexico focused on the country's political information. She leads the multimedia team there to have stories in new formats for different audiences. She also coordinates investigations focusing on corruption, human rights, inequality, and violence. And her team won the Ortega y Gasset Awards 2018, the National Journalism Award, and was finalist in Gabriel Garcia Marquez Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big applause to Tania Montalvo.
Hi. Well, let me explain very quickly what is Animal Politico. Animal Politico is an independent digital media based in Mexico City. We born in November 2010, and now we are focused on 4 main topics that are corruption, inequality, human rights, understanding that human rights is our focus on our coverage on violence, insecurity, and organized crime in Mexico. And we also are doing fact-checking, and we are against hate speech with this fact-checking issue. That's important because as independent in Mexico, as you were saying, in Mexico, most of the media depend on public, government, and advertisement. Animal Politico is not. So for give you a data, last year, the government has $500 million for public advertisement. Half of that, $5 million, were for newspaper and main broadcastings, and the rest for state and local and other national media, but I mean the others like 2 other hundreds of millions, 2 other hundreds only media. I mean, the half of these 500 million were donate to 5 media in the country. So, as you can imagine, most of the media in Mexico, it's over-controlled by the government. That was like last year. This year, with a new government, it's supposed to be that budget half for the media. But what is happening? This year, a lot of journalists are fired because the media, they have to cut budget because they don't have the same budget of public advertisement. And what is happening to? The media is changing his editorial line according to the new government, because this government is a different party, a different line, completely different. So last year you will see, you can see, for example, the main newspaper attacking the candidate that now is president, you know? And this year, everything is okay with this president. So in that context, what we are doing in Animal Politico, the most important thing is we are not depending on one unique revenue source. We have many, and we are inventing all the time new ones. What I mean with this is we have to adapt to new audiences, no, maybe to new markets. What I mean with that, new audiences, it means what the readers really want to have in our media, in Animal Politico. In 2010, when we just born, we depend on advertisement and programmatics. That, of course, we all know that went down. After that, with Enrique Peña Nieto government, what happened is a lot of human rights violations. With that, the big organizations look for Mexico. So Ford Foundation, Open Society Foundation start working with us and we receive grants. That was great, of course. But what happened? We start thinking, what will happen when that finishes? What we want to have more grants. So we need another revenue sources. So we start with crowdfunding. Okay, let's do crowdfunding. Crowdfunding works, yes, but only in the beginning. You know, like we launch a huge campaign and people start to donate, a great crowdfunding campaign. But after that, people was like, yeah, but I already donate once. Good for you, and you are doing great work. But they see this donation like, I'm well helping you, but I also need my own money for another thing. So I can't donate all the time. That's why we turn everything and start thinking, okay, which are actually our audiences? So this crowdfunding is this year a membership program. Sometimes it looks like it's the same, but it's not. Let me explain you the difference. The difference is, with the crowdfunding campaign, people was thinking that they were paying for content. They were donating for content. With the membership program, we have this message of you are part of the team that are doing this content, that are doing this great job. So we have a huge membership program since this July 2019. We now have 800 members. And the most important thing is that we are not losing anyone in all this time. Well, 4 months, but it's all this time. I hope that at the end of the year we have 1,000. But these 800 are more from the people that actually donate in our crowdfunding campaign. And we launched 3 different crowdfunding campaigns since 2011. So people, it's staying because we are working with them all the time, with benefits that, like, for example, you can navigate animalpolitico.com without advertisement. You have access to the comments only if you are a member of Animal Politico. You have access to our investigation before the rest of the public, but we are also planning, for example, forums, discussions, videos, Facebook Lives only for you, and people, it's interacting with the team. This interaction, it traduces to, okay, I'm feeling part of this community. And we are moving this message of this membership program is because we are doing stories that matters to you, stories that matters to the citizens. We are not talking to politicians. We are not talking to authorities. We are talking to our audience, with you, that you are our member, you are our reader, you are part of the team. But that new audiences, it's not only this membership program. For example, we understand that these new audiences are communicating by social media, different formats, a different language, right? We know how to do that. We have more than 1.5 million followers on Twitter and 1 million on Facebook. So we know how to use social media. So we are doing consultancy on social media. And this consultancy, it's for civil society organizations, it's for enterprises, it's for universities, it's for everyone that actually needs a consultancy on how to use social media. We are also, for example, consultancy on fact-checking. We did this Verificado project that was huge and was a model for all other fact-checking and verification projects, not only in Latin America, in the world. So we are doing also fact-checking and consultancy on fact-checking. And we are also doing using the things that we have to do, that it's, I know how to talk with young people. I know how to explain things to different audiences, so we are selling that with commercial content. Let me explain this a little bit. The commercial content, it's not that our editorial team is doing commercial things. No, we have a commercial team two people, but it's a commercial team, that it's completely independent from the editorial, but they are doing this content using the skills that we have in Animal Politico. I mean, we already knew that a video on Instagram with this format will be helpful for the public. Okay, we sell that. You need a video for your product. We can do, well, the commercial team can do it, and you can use it in your website, whatever you want. Or if you want that video lives in our website, we mark that as commercial content. We are the only media in Mexico that actually mark all the content that is commercial or that it's paid. What else we are doing? We are launching, or we have different media, but because Animal Politico, the name, it's not a very good name to sell. You know, people, it's like, okay, why? I don't want to be in Animal Politico where I will find violence, corruption, and that kind of things. So we have animalgourmet.com, that it's our brother, Gourmet, about chefs, gastronomy, food, and that kind of things. And we also have Animal.mx, Animal MX, that it's a website for a different audience. It's like the happy version of Animal Politico, with is for young people, you know, technology, health, mental health, science. We are working with young people. We are working with universities, journalism students. What do you want to read? And that sites, Animal Gourmet and Animal MX, are completely different for selling, for commercial content. What I'm trying to say is that we have a lot of revenue streams, a lot, and all of these, of course, are important, but none of them are indispensable. If we lost one of them, nothing happened. I mean, we don't have to fire people. We are not closing one part of the newsroom. We're still working in the same topics. We're still doing investigative journalism. We are working exactly the same if we lost one. Of course, if we lost 5 of them, it would be different. But as we are working all the time in this, we are having now for the membership program. We have the grants, of course. We are doing projects specific with these grants. Not on that's important because you say that we are not using the grant only for journalism. It's very important to invest in the team. I put this example that we use the grant from Open Society Foundation, for example, for our audience team. We built an audience team with that grant, and that audience team, before the grant was over, they construct a product that was easy to sell, and with that selling, the audience team could be permanent in Animal Politico's team. What it's doing, this audience team, all that I said before, they are thinking in new audiences, who is reading, who is not, what they are reading, what the readers really want, because we need to talk in which formats. We need video, we need Instagram, we need TikTok, what we do need. This is what this audience team is doing, and that audience team was constructed with a grant. So it's important that when we receive money from any source, not to use everything in, okay, let's go to reporting and let's go to investigative journalism. We need a base, of course, because that's what the trust of the people actually will prevail with us and will permit us the rest of the things. But it is important to also invest in the rest of the team that is supporting that investigative journalism. So the key, I think, is, of course, quality journalism. It's the most important, and it's the only thing that we never must lose. But also, it's important to create a community. what actually matters to citizens. Because with that community, it will be easier to have a new forms to talk to the readers and to the readers to be involved on what we are doing. So last one, the user experience. That's also that we learn in Animal Politico because, for example, at one point, animalpolitico.com was a terrible website, was awful. And people start saying us that if you don't redesign your website, it will be impossible to have a membership program. Why? Because you have readers, yes, and you have your readers, your readers are loyal. But they are loyal because they know you and they don't care that your website, that the user experience is terrible. But if you want to grow up, if you want to attract new audiences with this membership program, the first thing is that everyone, actually, if they don't know everything about you, feels good with your website. That if it is easy to read everything, to find your investigations, to understand what you are doing, because it's not clear if you are a general website, if you have investigation, if you are doing fact-checking, what are you doing? So this kind of things, so user experience, I think it's something that we, as journalists, we don't think about it. And sometimes we are doing journalism for journalists, and we are not doing journalism for the readers, and we forget that actually the readers are the ones, they want to be involved in this community, and this community is the key to existing, no? to prevail. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tanya, for those highly interesting insights to the whole business of Animal Politico. So we have one speaker more. I would like to introduce him to you. He's a man from Zimbabwe. And already in 2012, so 7 years ago, he established a company, a news media outlet, which is called 263 Chat. And it's an online publication focused on encouraging and participating in progressive national dialogue. So I guess you also got a lot to tell about building a community. And together with a team of fellow journalists, they publish daily news. Check it out on 263chat.com. And I watch them on Twitter, on Instagram. It's quite impressive. Facebook too. They have hundreds of thousands of people following them. And please welcome now the chief storyteller of 263 Chat, Nigel Mugamu.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to try and keep this really short. I'm an accountant by profession, but I'm a journalist now. So we turned 7 2 months ago. So I wanted to throw a couple of numbers at you to give you a bit of context. I like to contextualize things. So the first number I want to throw to you is, where's my notes here? I can't even read my own handwriting. So the Zimbabwe's population were 14 million people. 12 million of them have mobile devices. 52% of the population are women. 67% of the population live in the rural areas. 65% of the population are considered youth, so that means they're under the age of 35. So that's number 6. Number 6, so 263 Chat was 7 years old. So 7 is our magic number right now. We've got 17 team members, so there's 17 of us in the team. I'm the chief storyteller, so all of us are storytellers. Going back to, there's a reason I'm telling you all these numbers, right? 83%, there's a mobile penetration is 83%, and the internet penetration is sitting at 57.9%. The price of petrol in January this year was $1.40. Right now it's sitting at $16.66. Our inflation is hovering at about 513%. Okay, so that's the context of where we are in Zimbabwe. I run an organization that is a for-profit organization, so we're not donor dependent. I'm an accountant by profession. My dad ensured that I was an accountant like him, and also my mom. I'm the oldest sibling, so my parents forced me into accountancy. I'm going to use this platform to thank them. So if you see them anytime soon, tell them I said thanks. But it's this accounting, the numbers part, that keeps the business going. And I'm very, very clear about what we're doing. I created 263 Chat 7 years ago in 2012 as a Twitter account. It was just evolved from a Twitter account. I literally just thought, we need to, as Zimbabweans, we need to have a conversation about our country. I used to live in the UK, I used to live in Australia, and I just, all the experiences living out there in the diaspora for, what was it, 12, 13 years, and I returned home in 2010, and I realized we don't talk enough about our own country to each other. So we're in the same room, same country, but we just don't talk enough. And what I decided to do was just to use Twitter as a platform for us to dialogue. I didn't have a business plan, didn't have a plan at all. I didn't think, how am I going to make money? I didn't think I would be here at Deutsche Welle speaking to you fine folks, about to have the drinks that we're going to have later, I'm sure, right? I didn't have a plan. I just knew that we needed to talk as a country, and for both Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe and those in the diaspora. Years later, we evolved into an online publication, so we're digital first, we're digital only, right? And one thing that's very, very important to us, apart from the team that helped me do the work that we do, is the community that we build around the brand. If we all agree in Zimbabwe, you've got state media on this side, I'm sure it's the same for other countries, especially other African countries. If you agree this state media is on this side and you've got private media on this side, we decided to plant ourselves right in the middle. So we like to think that we're balanced, credible, and we like to tell the truth. What that does, interestingly enough, is that it makes it much easier for advertisers to advertise with you because they don't know whose side you're on. So in the same publication, the same day, we could be anti-government, we could be anti-opposition, but in our way, we're telling the truth for what it is. How do we make our money? So we've got 5 revenue streams. It is possible. So anyone out there thinking that it's not, it is possible. I earn a living from this thing. This is how I pay for my daughter's school fee. She's 5 years old, and she's the sole reason I do this work right now. I want to be able to say to her in 13 years' time or so, this is what Daddy was doing to make your life better. So that's my inspiration. All my staff are on salary, so it's not like I've got interns and and it's all, everyone's on salary. We've tried, we're almost up to date with our salary. So yeah, we always try to keep up. It's not always, it's always difficult. Zim is a very difficult country economically at the moment. We do have a large and growing number of clients. So if you've seen me on the laptop during this conference, it's probably because I'm negotiating with some advertiser and I'm trying to offer them more. And no, well, if you sign up for this, we'll throw this in for free. And that's how we run the business. Of course, in a highly inflationary environment, things are difficult. So we've changed our rate card. I've changed it 6 times this year, and that's not the end. So 2 weeks ago, I changed it, and that was the October rate card. And the day that I got our graphic designer to finalize the rate card, fuel went up again, right? So I don't know, but having said all of that, we take pride in the work that we do. Some fine folks decided to invite us to events like this to come and share with you guys how we're able to do this. And I guess the idea is it is possible, and we're doing it. So if we can do it, you guys can. What I will say though, it is a character building process. So buckle in, right? Some months are great, some months aren't. But we're extremely passionate and proud of the work that we're doing. We know that and we're always looking at our community. We like to call them. We don't even like to call them audience. Our community first. So we're very community first. Let's reach them where they are. And I'll tell you one of the things that we decided to do as I try to wrap up. One of the things that we try to do to reach the community better was in Zimbabwe. And the reason why I gave you the stats on the mobile penetration is because in Zimbabwe, my brother Henry will spoke about this earlier. Where are you, Henry? Yeah, there you are. You spoke about this and said, look, in Zimbabwe, to a lot of people, the internet, or rather WhatsApp is the internet, So 2 years ago, 2 years ago this month actually, it was, before the coup, not coup, depending on what, which side you're on. We decided to launch what we call our e-paper. So it's our electronic paper. It reads like a newspaper. It's for WhatsApp only, right? Currently, it goes out to more people than all the daily publications published together. So we're a smaller outfit, but we're more agile, and we've got a larger distribution. That our e-paper goes out to more people than like I said, than the traditional media, put together, and it's sent via WhatsApp only. Okay, so that's something that obviously we're very, very proud of. It's advertising based. It's free. We don't buy numbers. We don't sell numbers. You opt in. You opt out, and that's one of our ways of trying to reach the community where they are. The next phase of this is to get onto SMS, because we think SMS is dead. The other side of so there's 57% of the population here, or 57 have internet penetration. What about the other 40-odd%? And those people matter too. So we're now launching an SMS version that gets sent out at the same time. So those are some of the ways that we're using, and I know my time's up. These are some of the strategies that we're using to try and reach our community where they are. And we think it's important to reach out to them, as opposed to the other way around. What I will say, the 3 last points, build a community around the brand. That's something that we're very, very proud of. I, as the owner of this thing, will always go onto Twitter, social media, wherever I am, and I'll respond to tweets. I'll say sorry when we mess up. And I'm literally the face of this thing. And it's very, very important for people to be able to identify and say, there's the guy who runs that company. So it's very, very important. The second point I'll say is find the audience or find the community and engage them daily, wherever they are. So if they're on SMS, engage them. If they're on Facebook, find them and engage them. Let them know that their voice matters. And then the third and last point, I can't even read my handwriting here. In terms of revenue and the growth of the business, always, always think outside the box. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys, for those inspiring speeches. I think, Sulemana, this is your mic, because I got my one here. So I think one of the key words that we heard in your speech, of course, take something to drink if you want, yeah? Maybe for me, the key word was community. So maybe you can share, Tanya, what does it actually take to build a community that is willing to pay for what journalists do?
The community work from Animal Politico started even before the media exists. I mean, Animal Politico was born in November 2010, but in November 2009, we launched our Twitter account and in which we were start talking with our audience. So for a year, it was like, hello, what do you want to read? What do you want to know? We are here. And actually, we were like the first media in Mexico that has a human behind the social media. Like it was censoring all the time. This year, approaching allowed us to have animalpolitico.com with a very strong audience that already wants to read what we have. And after that, we continue with the strategy of always talk with the people, with the audience. So the dialogue is very important. We answer everything. We answer every mention. We are answering messages in Facebook Messenger, in Twitter, of course, and we are listening all the time. In fact, in the last year project, Verificado, we have this hashtag Quiero que verifiquen, I want you to verify. And this hashtag, I want you to verify, actually was the big success of the initiative, because with I want you to verify, we receive everything suspicious that actually we were not watching in our social media, not with CrowdTangle or not with any tool, because people they were talking with us all the time. So this is an example of how we are talking with people in social media or in internet. I think now community building must be offline. So with our members, we are working with them there is this festival, movie festival, that let's do together something with our members in talking, and we are asking them, what do you want to do? Most of the members, for example, they want to talk with the reporters. So we still don't have that meeting, but I think probably next year, we will have it like a huge meeting with members and with reporters, because the members are asking for that. So I think that the key is to actually listen, listen what the audience is asking for.
So I understand you start on social media. I think that's what you did too, Nigel, which is interesting to me that you use Twitter, because in Germany, I think 2 to 3 million people only use Twitter. I think Instagram is 15 million, Facebook even 30. And Twitter in our country is mostly for journalists, maybe like people who want to talk out loud and VIPs. It seems like in Mexico and in Zimbabwe, it's for the normal people, right? But if you grow this audience, how do you make them pay finally? I mean, there must be a big audience at first, but how do you filter them to real community members?
So, is this on? Yeah. So the idea is, in a country where things are tough economically, to me, it still doesn't make sense to make the community pay, right? So whilst I subscribe to various whether it's New York Times or whatever, and I have to pay to get behind the paywall, I don't believe in putting a paywall for our publication, and I don't.
None of your 5 revenue streams is a paywall.
Yes, there's no.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no paywall. Yeah, we think, let's get the business to pay so the consumer can access the information. If we don't do that, we end up in a situation where people at the, what I want is for generally everyone to have access to information. And I don't want someone to say, well, I can't afford to pay for this information, even though I need to know what's going on. So I just don't want that situation. So I'd rather find a way of ensuring that the content is free to the community member, and then someone else pays for it.
All right, and are your net revenue streams comparable to those that Tanya mentioned?
Yeah, so we've got some. I would love to talk to you after this, actually. Yeah, so peer pressure. Yeah, so we've got different revenue streams similar to what Tanya was saying. Obviously, we've got to grow those revenue streams. We've got to increase them. We've got to be very strategic about what we're doing. Each month, each week, and obviously going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sulemana, what you mentioned is that it's very important to know your audience and collect data to know whom you're talking to, of course, as a journalist, listening to them. What do you think does it change to the daily work of journalists if you're really working for a particular audience and maybe answering their questions and not what is kind of relevant in terms of authorities or what the agenda is on by politicians? What does it change for the daily work?
Well, I think what people want is quality information. And different people want different types of information. In a lot of the countries in West Africa, people will tell you that, well, if I decide to produce content on environment, on climate change, on health, and so on and so forth, I may not likely get the kind of readership that I want or audience that I want. And so on a daily basis, I'm focused on, President A has done this, opposition B has responded, the opposition says this, the president has responded, and so on and so forth. And so ultimately, people are losing confidence in the media. I think what is great about knowing your audience is so that you can also produce the most relevant content that would build that relationship between the two of you. So if you don't know what your people want or who is likely to follow you, who is likely to read you, then you also just be doing anything. And I think that is why it is key. And there was a study that was done about 4 or 5 years ago that pointed to the fact that one of the most critical needs for media sustainability in Africa is about building audience data that if I want to start a media organization, I already know this is the ecosystem and these are the kinds of people who are looking for this type of information. And I can either decide to be a specific issue-focused organization or decide to be a generalist if I have the capacity. But as it is, without that data, almost everybody is forced to be a generalist. So I'm doing sports, entertainment, education, health, politics, and so on and so forth. And under the circumstance, I'm not able to do the kind of quality work that would build that relationship that I want to foster.
And I guess you have already collected some data or had the insights what the data is saying. And what was like the biggest surprise you had after analyzing the data about the audience, which you maybe didn't know before you had this data?
Well, we haven't really done a comprehensive study. There's a current study that is ongoing about audience analysis, about people's willingness to pay or not to pay, and we're doing another study about media trust and credibility issues in the region. But the little data that is coming out suggests that a lot more people are not consuming the media, not because they don't like information, but it's just because they don't get what they want from the media. So I want to learn more about my system. I want to know which hospital is providing the best services so that I can access when I'm not well. I want to know where I can get the best service delivered to me, and so on and so forth. And all I get from the media is the opposition says that the president doesn't look fine, and the president is saying that the opposition is shorter than, and so on and so forth. So I think that is what is emerging, that people really still would love to have quality information, but unfortunately they are not getting it because a lot more people are focusing on clickbaits because they say they must survive. So it's about headlines that are not in sync with whatever the content is, and entertainment in the news. In Ghana, that is what people will tell you. If you listen to local language media, the news bulletin, which is supposed to be a serious business, is about entertainment. They dramatize it. And they will tell you, well, we would give people what they want, not necessarily what they need. And I think that we need to begin to shift towards giving people what they need rather than what we think they want.
Well, I guess the good thing about the community-based work, Tanya, is that clickbaiting is over, right? Because you don't need to do it anymore as you serve your community directly.
Yeah, I always say that our clickbait, for example, our clickbait in Animal Politico, it's useful information. It's not the clickbait that actually it's in the rest of the media. When we have a clickbait, it's because we are publishing something about these are the routes that you can use today, that it will be a strike in the center of the city, for example. That kind of useful content, that's our clickbait. And yes, because people, it's not that people don't want, for example, entertainment or that they don't want sports. It's maybe that they want a quality content about that. Maybe they really want to know about the new iPhone, but they don't want to read exactly the same that they are reading on Twitter, that they are reading in any other conversation on WhatsApp or any other media. They want to actually understand more. And that's the kind of quality that we need to think about it in order to understand our community and to also to be this part of be trustable and to fight disinformation also, because part of the crisis of this mis and disinformation is that sometimes people choose to believe to the person that it's posting everything and anything on Facebook that in the press. And they choose that because they are very used to read in the press things that are clickbait and that are not useful for their lives. No?
I see. And very, very straight question. You said you have 800 members paying for your service. What is their willingness to pay? How much do they pay for Animal Politico?
They pay $10 monthly.
So like Netflix or Spotify,
yeah,
comparable.
But we have like promotions or offers. For example, we have a special plan for students. We have a special plan for academics. We have a special plan if you were a donor in our crowdfunding campaign. We have also, we are launching annual, yes, that it will be cheaper than the monthly. And we are all the time thinking, that's also very important. We are all the time thinking in how to move that membership. It's not only that the $10 all the time, so we are offering different things to the public.
All right, very interesting. Guys, I guess you have many questions for the people on stage. There's already the first one. Do we have a microphone? Yes, it's coming up to you. Please say shortly who you are, and then let's go. Mike is coming.
Good afternoon. Very briefly, I have two questions. One to Mr. Sulemana and another one is Madam Tania. Basically, media development. You are very much emphasizing the media development. So my question is, media development for whom? Is it for media owner, or is it for journalist community, or is it for the community people or media consumer? Because yesterday model do not work today in the era of the digital transformation. We need a model. That model would be working in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. So my question to you and Tania, normally we see people frequently buying the mobile data from the buyer or mobile supplier every day. But they are not willing to pay the media fees or media consumer of the media. So it's a very hardly thing all over the Asia, Pacific, Africa, and as well as Latin America also. So my question to you, do you have a on-demand news or on-demand program for the consumer side? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those two questions. We're going to start with Sulemana with the first. Yeah, we're going to answer them right away and then go further, okay? All right, so Sulemana.
Okay, so I will respond to your first question about media development for who with some 3 illustrations. I gave one earlier about how a news report done by a journalist was able to mobilize close to $2 million to build a mother and child facility at a hospital to save women and children. Now, just less than 3 months ago, there is another journalist who did a story from the same media organization that has resulted in the suspension of the head of the Public Procurement Authority in Ghana. And this is because this person had set up a company and government contracts was going to this company that he owns, and these contracts were being sold to the public. So this is what he was, basically using his office, which is supposed to ensure that the public resources are used judiciously for. Before then, this same journalist who did this recent story had done a story that led to the cancellation of a $74 million contract awarded by the government of Ghana to a company that had earlier been banned by the World Bank for, corruption in contracting. In Burkina Faso, because we support journalists to do work, about 2 months ago, we supported 3 different journalists, and one did a story about a health facility that had been abandoned, as a result of which people in the area were not having access to health care. After the story was done, 3 weeks later, the facility was opened. Another story was about how people suffering from stroke were struggling because there were no ECG machines, there were no scanners in the hospital, and so on and so forth. And after the story was done, just about 2 weeks later, the government authority responsible made sure that was done. I am using these examples to illustrate the public good of journalism. So when I talk about media development and not necessarily media for development, I am looking at what journalism can do for the community, for a country, and for the society. And I think that, yes, you may own a media organization. I may throw in money there to invest in supporting your organization to develop. But ultimately, yes, you would make money. But I believe the benefit to society of good journalism is far more than how much an owner of a media organization would make. So I would say that media development for society and not necessarily for the owner of a media organization.
Thanks a lot, Sulemana. The second question was if you have on-demand service, if I got it correct, right?
Yeah. We don't have a paywall. Our membership program works with a special website for members. So the members has this animalpolitico.com/suscríbete. And the only difference is they are able to comment. They have a special chat that communicates with the newsroom, for example. They have no advertisement there, and also they can read our investigation before. Today at 7 p.m. we will publish an investigation, and it will be also for only for subscribers, for members. And tomorrow at 6 a.m. it will be for everyone. So we are not closing any content. What we are doing in order to achieve users that they are not very common with media with reading news in the internet, is, for example, with Verificado, we use WhatsApp, because in Mexico, to use WhatsApp is free. WhatsApp is not a consumer data in Mexico. So people, that's why they prefer to send messages, or if they see something, to send some news. And they are not sharing links, because to click that costs data. So with Verificado, we create like images, and we send it to WhatsApp in order to inform. And what we win with that? Well, people knew the media, knew the things that we are doing, and that develops in trust in the media, because they are reading that the quality content that we are creating with these images that are data-free in WhatsApp. And after that, in Verificado, we discovered that at least half of the users visit the website, because they already knew the kind of information that they will find in the website. So that's the way that we can do without using data, at least at the beginning.
Thank you. So we have the next question from the lady in the third row right here.
Thank you. So my name's Prue Clark, and I am now with the Judith Neilson Institute, but for the last 10 years I've run a project, an NGO called New Narratives in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And I actually learned everything that I do now and think from a year spent in Ghana at Joy FM 2003, which is really a role model for a standard-setting media house, and the change in the quality of media in Ghana in that 16 years, is, I think, profound, but also in the expectation of the audience about what journalism can do for them. I wondered, I was going to ask you about brown envelopes, because nobody talks about them in these settings, and I wish you would. Has that less, so payments to journalists, often when I was there in 2003, many of the media houses didn't actually pay their journalists at all. They made their income from payments from the newsmakers, and it had a profoundly negative effect on the business model, and it's still the case in many West African countries. I'm sure it's the same in Zimbabwe. And the second question is the diaspora. These are incredibly wealthy, relatively, audience members who come to you to get their news. I would have thought there'd be some really good opportunities for monetization there.
So I think the first question was directed to Sulemana, right? Yeah. And Nigel, maybe you can talk about the diaspora.
Well, so unfortunately, brown envelopes is still a phenomenon. And Beate is here with DW Academy. They did a recent study on brown envelopes. And you're right, the point that media organizations, a lot of them are unable to pay. And in 2017, we did a tour of media organizations in Ghana. And in northern Ghana, so there are 3 northern regions in the country, what we discovered was that there was no single media organization, and here I'm talking about radio station, that was not in arrears in terms of salaries. And the one that said we are doing well was because they only owe their staff 3 months. And even that, when we asked, 2017, that was about 600 Ghana cedis, they said. In today's terms, that's about $110, and that is the salary for a month. And there are others who don't pay at all. And because a lot of people are also unemployed, they find solace in just saying, I work with this media organization, and all they can do is find themselves at events, conferences, press conferences, and at the end of the day, people give them what they would call transport. And there's a big debate in Ghana and across West Africa whether it is unethical, even though there is that argument that, well, if you don't pay, you don't get your story out. The journalist would say, well, I don't do it because you paid me. And even in my organization, which is a media development organization, a press freedom organization, I quite often have big battles with my colleagues in the programming departments when we have forums or press conferences or seminars and so on and so forth. And I say, no, I'm not approving any budget for any money to journalists. And their complaint has always been, well, you are the same person who come to us 3 days ago and 3 days next and say, so where is the publicity for the event? Where did we get
fees or media, a consumer of the media? So it's a very hardly thing all over the Asia, Pacifica, Africa, and as well as Latin America also. So my question to you, do you have a on-demand news or on-demand program for the consumer side? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those two questions. We're going to start with Sulemana with the first. Yeah, we're going to answer them right away and then go further, okay? All right, so Sulemana.
Okay, so I will respond to your first question about media development for who with some 3 illustrations. I gave one earlier about how a news report done by a journalist was able to mobilize close to $2 million to build a mother and child facility at a hospital to save women and children. Now, just less than 3 months ago, there is another journalist who did a story from the same media organization that has resulted in the suspension of the head of the Public Procurement Authority in Ghana. And this is because this person had set up a company and government contracts was going to this company that he owns, and these contracts were being sold to the public. So this is what he was, basically using his office, which is supposed to ensure that the public resources are used judiciously for. Before then, this same journalist who did this recent story had done a story that led to the cancellation of a $74 million contract awarded by the government of Ghana to a company that had earlier been banned by the World Bank for, corruption in contracting. In Burkina Faso, because we support journalists to do work, about 2 months ago, we supported 3 different journalists, and one did a story about a health facility that had been abandoned, as a result of which people in the area were not having access to health care. After the story was done, 3 weeks later, the facility was opened. Another story was about how people suffering from stroke were struggling because there were no ECG machines, there were no scanners in the hospital, and so on and so forth. And after the story was done, just about 2 weeks later, the government authority responsible made sure that was done. I am using these examples to illustrate the public good of journalism. So when I talk about media development and not necessarily media for development, I am looking at what journalism can do for the community, for a country, and for the society. And I think that, yes, you may own a media organization. I may throw in money there to invest in supporting your organization to develop. But ultimately, yes, you would make money. But I believe the benefit to society of good journalism is far more than how much an owner of a media organization would make. So I would say that media development for society and not necessarily for the owner of a media organization.
Thanks a lot, Sulemana. The second question was if you have on-demand service, if I got it correct, right?
Yeah. We don't have a paywall. Our membership program works with a special website for members. So the members has this animalpolitico.com/ subscriber, suscríbete. And the only difference is they are able to comment. They have a special chat that communicates with the newsroom, for example. They have no advertisement there, and also they can read our investigation before. Today at 7 p.m. we will publish an investigation, and it will be also for only for subscribers, for members. And tomorrow at 6 a.m. it will be for everyone. So we are not closing any content. What we are doing in order to achieve users that they are not very common with media with reading news in the internet, is, for example, with Verificado we use WhatsApp, because in Mexico to use WhatsApp is free. WhatsApp is not a consumer data in Mexico, so people, that's why they prefer to send messages, or if they see something to send some news, and they are not sharing links, because to click that costs data. So with Verificado we create like images and we send it to WhatsApp in order to inform. And what we win with that? Well, people knew the media, knew the things that we are doing, and that develops in trust in the media, because they are reading that the quality content that we are creating with these images that are data-free in WhatsApp. And after that, in Verificado, we discovered that at least half of the users visit the website, because they already knew the kind of information that they will find in the website. So that's the way that we can do without using data, at least at the beginning.
Thank you. So we have the next question from the lady in the third row right here.
Thank you. So my name's Prue Clark, and I am now with the Judith Neilson Institute, but for the last 10 years I've run a project, an NGO called New Narratives in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And I actually learned everything that I do now and think from a year spent in Ghana at Joy FM 2003, which is really a role model for a standard-setting media house, and the change in the quality of media in Ghana in that 16 years, is, I think, profound, but also in the expectation of the audience about what journalism can do for them. I wondered, I was going to ask you about brown envelopes, because nobody talks about them in these settings, and I wish you would. Has that less, so payments to journalists, often when I was there in 2003, many of the media houses didn't actually pay their journalists at all. They made their income from payments from the newsmakers, and it had a profoundly negative effect on the business model, and it's still the case in many West African countries. I'm sure it's the same in Zimbabwe. And the second question is the diaspora. These are incredibly wealthy, relatively, audience members who come to you to get their news. I would have thought there'd be some really good opportunities for monetization there.
So I think the first question was directed to Sulemana, right? Yeah. And Nigel, maybe you can talk about the diaspora.
Well, so unfortunately, brown envelopes is still a phenomenon. And Beate is here with DW Academy. They did a recent study on brown envelopes. And you're right, the point that media organizations, a lot of them are unable to pay. And in 2017, we did a tour of media organizations in Ghana. And in northern Ghana, so there are 3 northern regions in the country, what we discovered was that there was no single media organization, and here I'm talking about radio station, that was not in arrears in terms of salaries. And the one that said we are doing well was because they only owe their staff 3 months. And even that, when we asked, 2017, that was about 600 Ghana cedis, they said. In today's terms, that's about $110, and that is the salary for a month. And there are others who don't pay at all. And because a lot of people are also unemployed, they find solace in just saying, I work with this media organization, and all they can do is find themselves at events, conferences, press conferences, and at the end of the day, people give them what they would call transport. And there's a big debate in Ghana and across West Africa whether it is unethical, even though there is that argument that, well, if you don't pay, you don't get your story out. The journalist would say, well, I don't do it because you paid me. And even in my organization, which is a media development organization, a press freedom organization, I quite often have big battles with my colleagues in the programming departments when we have forums or press conferences or seminars and so on and so forth. And I say, no, I'm not approving any budget for any money to journalists. And their complaint has always been, well, you are the same person who come to us 3 days ago and 3 days next and say, so where is the publicity for the event? Where did we get it? And so you put us into trouble. And I say, well, I cannot pay. We should make the event as newsworthy as possible for the journalists to cover it. Unfortunately, many media organizations cannot even transport their journalists to where they must go to get the stories. And that is why, as an organization, all the stories that I was relating with Impact is because we were able to provide funding to the journalists to be able to move to wherever they have to go, to travel and interview people. And at the end, they are able to then produce the quality story that makes the impact. So that's the reality. Sometimes it's difficult to blame the journalists because the conference is at maybe 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers away from here. They need to take a taxi or a public bus. Who is paying for it? He is not paid. If he is paid, the salary is too poor. So if he gets there, how does he cover the cost? So unfortunately, that's the reality. And then quickly on the diasporan point, is something that we are working on. So there's a publication in Liberia, since you've been there before, called the Front Page Africa, managed by Rodney Sear, and it is the leading publication there. And we know that Liberia has a lot of people in the diaspora because of the decade-old civil war. And currently what we're trying to do with him is to see if we can build a technology that would allow for people to pay into Liberia. Unfortunately, PayPal, there is no single country in West Africa that PayPal is allowed. And the banking sector, the payment sector is still such that online payments hasn't really evolved. And these are some of the challenges when even you want to consider how you get payments being made by people in the diaspora.
Thank you. You want to add something?
Yeah, so Prue, you're right. The diaspora, it's look, a quarter of our population live outside of Zim, mostly in South Africa. So we know that these guys are obviously listening. They're reading our stories. They're commenting. They're obviously talking to us on a daily basis. We haven't quite figured out yet how. One of the ideas that we're sort of toying with is, and this goes back to sort of sustainability, but listen, we want to do a health story in this part of the country. It's going to cost us $400 to do it. Can we all contribute so that we can do the story? And in that, we'll always find that someone actually is from that area and will obviously play a lead role in giving us a source or whatever. So that's how we want to engage the diaspora. We want to, we're obviously looking at, Stilly from Daily Maverick and Dabo from Premier Times. The three of us talk quite a bit, actually thanks to Cass. And we're exploring the membership model. Like you said, the members get the exclusive at 7 p.m. and then everyone gets it the next day at 6 p.m. So 6 a.m. So we're looking at those kinds of models. We know that the diaspora would probably jump in and want the exclusive content. They've got the means to pay. So it's an ongoing thing. But in having said that, we had a lot of plans this year to do so much stuff. But if you're dealing with 513% inflation, you're having to deal with some really basic stuff when you really want to be dealing with strategic stuff. And so we're not where we should be, given our strategic plans in January. So yeah, we're a little bit behind, But yeah, the ship's still moving forward.
Great. We have time for one more question. The gentleman in the second row already raised his hand.
Thank you. I'm Alice Rohr, data scientist and AI consultant. I have a question for Tanya. I heard actually you talking about having fact-checking tools and providing such kind of verification insights and information for your audience. My question is that how your audience basically trust your fact-checking methodologies and whether you use intelligent tools on fact-checking techniques or just like manual verifications and automatic auto verification methodologies. Thank you.
Yes, we are doing fact-checking since 2015, I think. We are doing fact-checking. We start debunking disinformation last year. We are Animal Politico is the only in Mexico that it's part of the International Fact-Checking Network. So we are doing the same methodology that this network in the world, LUPA, Jill, is also part of it. So our methodology is public, and the most important thing for each of our fact checks is it's replicable. If any citizens wants to check our result, they can do it following our methodology, and because we publish everything. We publish the methodology, we publish all the sources that we use. If a source gives us a document, we publish that. We publish the interview, we publish the audio with that source, with the interview, I mean. The thing is that the methodology is, and the categories that we are using are completely public, and in that way, any people can actually be a our fact-checking, you know? The most important thing is to be replicable in order to have the tools. And we also, for example, are doing media literacy. So we are publishing how you can be the fact-check with Google Image Reverse or with other tools in order to all the people, the readers, to also be involved in this verification process. And we are also doing what we talk, explainers. We are doing these explainers in order to explain things. And so we have a lot of materials to involve the citizens. Because now we know that it's not very useful to say you are wrong, you share false information. It's easier to connect with people explaining why that is false. Those are the methodology in which we use in order to understand why that is false, and to explain also the consequences of this information. When we publish the consequences of this information, that people can be killed because of this information, actually the readers get more involved, and they start to sharing what they think is suspicious, but they start also asking for these explainers or for these tools to start doing the verification themselves.
All right. I know that you guys have some questions left, but the good thing is there's drinks waiting for us and maybe some food. And all those 3 people here are, of course, here today and even tomorrow to chat with you. Thank you so much for the very diverse and interesting insights that you gave us. I learned, I think, not only the media is developing, but the role of a journalist is changing. Because we are not longer a one-way street and only sending out our information, but we need to listen what the audience wants and what they have to say, and then maybe build a community and one day make them pay for our work, which can be one very successful revenue stream, what we saw. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for you guys. I give up to Edith.